Downloading data.
Welcome to the Download Podcast, the audio companion to the Download video show.
Tell me what you want, when you want it.
Featuring more trends and insights for digital marketers. Presented by
Microsoft Advertising.
The Download. With your hosts, Jennifer Solomon-Baum and Jeffrey Colon.
Welcome to the Download Episode 2. I'm Jeffrey Colon, head of the brand studio at Microsoft Advertising. And I'm here in our LA offices with my esteemed colleague, the notorious JSB, Jennifer Solomon-Baum. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing real well.
What's your acronym?
I mean, some people used to call me like DJ because that was affiliated with my social profiles, but maybe GSC for Jeffrey Stephen Colon.
We'll work on that.
All right. Well, for our listeners, I'll give you a visual. I'm wearing a Notorious B.I.G. t-shirt, paying homage to my colleague, the Notorious JSB. I think the next episode, we should have you wear a Notorious RBG t-shirt.
I actually have a few t-shirts. I'll bring it up.
I love it. And it's been actually quite fun to return to the office. I feel like I've actually seen you more in the last 2 months than the entire last 16 months.
I actually quite enjoy coming to the office. It feels good getting out of the house, put your real clothes and shoes on, and a different landscape. We've seen some colleagues as well. It's refreshing. And I think that as we think about the return to the office in the coming month, I know that some of our friends in the industry are looking towards going back into the office in July and in August. And I think for us, it's going to be sometime in September, and continue that flexibility of returning to the office some days, continue to work from home other days.
I'm enjoying it. I don't know if I would enjoy 5 days a week doing this, but I enjoy being outside of the house just to get a different view of things. You're in the office again. There's not a lot of people around, but it'll be interesting when people are around again, because there'll be some serendipity.
Yeah.
There'll be some discussions. There'll also be some downtime. Hey, I'm here, but I also want to sort of escape. And maybe that escapism comes in the form of, hey, there's a few days a week that I'm working out of my home still, and that's how I escape from others when I want to do my heaviest creative thinking. And then I'm around people when I want to do meetings and when we want to talk about things and we want to bounce ideas off each other.
We've all displayed a huge amount of resilience. And as we speak more and more about mental health and mental well-being, which is really important, it's interesting to see how we're going to readjust to being surrounded by people. And, we've missed our water cooler conversation, like we say in America. But, again, to your point of those impromptu conversation in the hallway that spark a lot of creativity, I'm looking forward to that. Because everything has to be scheduled in the calendar right now to, hey, let's have a brainstorm on that day at that time. And maybe your idea machine is not on par for that particular day. So I brought some stats as well in terms of coming from the Microsoft.com work lab. They have a ton of research that's really interesting, and we'll put the link in the show note. But 70% of workers want flexible remote work options to continue. 66% of leaders are considering redesigning physical space for hybrid work, which I thought was really interesting, because does that mean that we're going to lose a designated workspace in the office? And are we all going to have open shared space in the future? Who knows?
I mean, it could mean that. It also could mean it could mean a pivot in the other direction, which is you have a space that you can retreat into when you are at work. But I don't know. I think it's probably going to be more maybe open hot desking for the future.
Hybrid meetings have become the norm the past 15 months, or I can't count anymore. But in a way, the positive side of this was it became the great equalizer. And I'll use a personal example, because my team and the headquarters of my particular team, they're all based in Seattle, and a few of us are in New York or Los Angeles and other cities. And so we used to run meetings where the majority of the people were in one location, talking openly and freely, and then some of us were on video call, and it felt unbalanced. Now everyone became on the same foot in a way. Like
Yeah.
everyone was remote and everyone was
remote.
on video call. So we developed different habits of raising your hand to ask a question, to typing stuff in the chat while we're having a conversation. How are we going to move back into, some people are going to be in the room again and other people are going to be over the phone. So I hope we don't go back to exactly how it was before, but become more inclusive regardless of where we are. And with people who have left headquarters and moved to other location, perhaps we'll continue to be on this equal foot in terms of gathering and meetings.
Yeah, it'd be interesting there to see how that all sort of takes shape, and if we just bounce back to, well, these are the corporate headquarters, this is where a majority of people are, and then you have remote sprinkled around, or if it's just, there is a great equalizer that even you may have people who are near the corporate headquarters, but they might not be in the office that
That's
day,
right.
and therefore they're video conferencing in.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to work from the coffee shop again.
yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of looking forward, what do we have in this episode upcoming?
Retail is back, I've heard you saying. And so retail therapy is something that brings joy. And we've seen that everyone is back into the store and shopping. And so I think we're going to go deep into with an expert later on. Tell me a little bit about, what's coming.
Yeah, Casceil Fuqua, who is our sort of in-house retail expert. She's going to join us to talk about what trends she's seeing in that space. I think it's going to be pretty fascinating. She's got some good data that we can go over.
What else do we have today?
We also have a new segment at the tail end of the show, Trends with Benefits. So we're going to dive deep into, what trends are on the horizon and how advertisers can benefit from knowing about these trends.
Love it. Catchy
Yeah.
name.
Not friends with benefits, trends with benefits.
It's a hashtag.
Yeah.
It's already trending.
Loving it. So before we get into talking to Casceil, one other question in terms of, mental health and where things are going. Read an article recently about how the economy may actually eclipse the economy in the pre-pandemic era because it's actually going to be so busy. And what's happening now is that employers are having a hard time hiring people, and there is just so much activity. Do you think we could have almost like a perfect storm, and this isn't a good situation, where people are having to adapt to getting back to work and then also having to adapt to the fact that there is so much going on, so much economic activity going on, it's almost uncontrollable, and we almost wish that we can just climb back under the covers and maybe sleep a little bit longer?
Well, it's a big question, Jeff. I think that I don't have a simple answer for that, but look at the traffic is back everywhere. And so I was just speaking to a friend of mine who's in France, they had been in lockdown for much longer than we were here. And the restaurants are finally open. Everyone is rushing to dine out again.
Yes.
And to the stores. In the UK as well, the shops were closed for a long time. Well, we were already open here in the US. They were still in proper lockdown. And so you're right, if you haven't done anything for a year, you want social interaction and you want to be served and sit down in a restaurant, even if you have to wait longer because there's not enough wait staff at the moment, in fact.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if it can be so overwhelming that it leads to a situation like we just saw while we're recording this, with the, for those who are, tennis fans around the globe with the French Open, Naomi Osaka just said like, hey, I can't deal with the stress of all of this, so I'm just going to not be at the tournament. Is that something that we can learn from? Because I think, some employers might be like, you got to be back in the office 5 days a week and that's that. Do we really need to almost like approach things where it's like, hey, you can just sort of gradually move into what makes you feel comfortable so we don't lose people who say like, I'm just not going to bother returning to work?
Yeah, I think we've all had to develop our empathy muscles and care, and everyone is in a different place. Some people have been alone for a long time and are keen to go back into social context, and some others are not. And I think that we can't force things. We have proved to the world that we can work from home. Again, we have a lot of friends who work for companies who are never allowing working from home. And we just demonstrated that we can still remain very efficient and productive. The graduation to back to normal, it's not going to be back to how things were before. It's going to be a new normal, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah. Something we'll definitely discuss on future episodes. So we'll definitely want to touch on that.
I think it's very brave what she did, actually. And she stood for herself and put her conditions down and just said, hey, I'm not going to do this. And again, like bringing mental health as a topic of utmost importance, and there's no shame and there's no need to feel embarrassed. You know, it's been a hard year for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. And with that said, I think I need to go out shopping so I can get
retail
some retail therapy.
Chop, chop.
You're listening to the Download Podcast, presented by Microsoft Advertising, with JSB and Jeff. And now, time for this month's big interview.
You think you're big time?
Our guest expert is also our colleague. For the past 5 years, Casceil Fuqua has been a senior analytical lead here with our advertising business at Microsoft. She's an expert in retail and consumer packaged goods. Her specialty is developing seasonal strategies for major online retailers. Casceil, welcome to the Download Podcast.
Thank you, JSB.
I want to start because we're here in person again, which means that we're sort of moving toward the post-pandemic. We were talking before, and you had said it's your first time actually in the office in 14 months. Let's think about this in the lens of retailers. Pre-pandemic or during the early part of the pandemic, they were all sort of trying to figure out how to shift most of their advertising budgets online, as well as get people to shop online. You know, where's this next shift in this sort of post-pandemic world that you're seeing based on a lot of the seasonal data that you get to look at?
Yeah, they're going to actually accelerate the retail transformation by optimizing for both personalization and convenience. So we actually saw that a lot during the pandemic, where, for example, Walmart increased their in-store pickup within 5 weeks by 300%. So we're going to see them start to accelerate that and look for convenience and personalization. So a lot of our e-commerce advertisers are going to look to AR and VR to do that. Sephora is one example of who's really doing that well. And also we have a lot of other retailers within the home and garden space. You can look at a couch and imagine it right there in your living room.
Yeah.
You don't have to leave. So that personalization and convenience is going to be key.
So that's interesting. So AR, VR, which, for a long period of time was just sort of this nice maybe thing to experiment with. You actually could see that being more mainstream as a result of what's happened the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're finding that advertisers are starting to accelerate those growths. They were looking at AR and VR for 5 years down the road.
Yep.
Now, because of the pandemic, they have to accelerate that timing.
That's sort of fascinating. I'm interested more in that just because we've experimented so much in that area. Another question I want to ask you is around search terminology. We were talking before the show. We almost work in an industry which is almost all about linguistics, like understanding language, understanding how it changes. What are some search terms you're starting to see now that are different from a year ago? And, what categories are they in?
So what we're really starting to see is due to the pandemic last year, a lot of consumers were unable to attend events, meaningful moments such as weddings, such as proms. So formal wear right now is increased by 120% year over year. We're also seeing the return to work and return to office, where people are looking for business attire, ties, not just for Father's Day, but ties going back into the office. So everyone wants to look sharp and crisp. So we're seeing an uptick in that. And believe it or not, shoes. How can you take for granted shoes when you've been wearing flip-flops and slides for the past year? Now you actually have to tie and lace up a shoe. So athletic shoes, we're seeing an increase in, and also dress shoes, and also dry cleaning. When is the last time you actually took your dress shirt to the cleaners? So
I can't
those
recall.
are some of the terms that are starting to increase.
So what you're saying, Casceil, is I'm not going to be able to get away with wearing Crocs in the near future here that I thought I was, right?
Real
Right,
shoes are
yes.
back.
Oh,
Real
thank God,
shoes are
real
back.
shoes are back.
Yeah.
And I can't get away with working, in my shorts, unless I want to look a little weird when I go
In
into the
California,
office.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, maybe here. Yeah, by the beach.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting though, in terms of what you said, like this back to school movement and back to work movement means, hey, you might have to go get a pair of pants or a dress, something that you can, attire, I guess, that we haven't really invested in. So those are interesting.
And then jeans,
terms.
like when is the last time that you've put on jeans? Normally, if you're sitting in the house, you have on your athleisure or your sweatpants. And if you gain weight like I did, those jeans don't button. So you
and
got to
what-
get a new pair.
I think we all gained weight. We call it, what do we
Yeah.
call that? The
COVID-15.
The COVID-15. Yeah. So that's an
Corona diet.
interesting area.
Speaking of back to school, actually, I am looking forward for my kids to go back to school and leave the house
Yes.
5 days a week. But it's funny because, they barely wore shoes for a year. They haven't used backpacks. And so, I'm going to have to go shopping for all those things for kids. And so what do we see in our data?
We see exactly all that. With COVID-19 numbers rising and vaccination rates increasing, schools are largely planning to return to in-person in the fall. So that's across a majority of the states. What we're going to see a big uptick in is hygiene products. Because now on those shopping lists, they're going to require you to have your own sanitizers, your own Kleenex, your own tissue, your own napkins. But what's going to be not changed from last year, what we saw a big increase in was books, computers, and electronics. Books increased 69% 2020, and electronics increased 53% 2020. And we expect those numbers to continue to rise.
Yep.
Interesting. So electronics, books, that's a given, but personal hygiene increases because we may have something where it's like, hey, we want you to wash your hands, but we also want you to have your own thing to, I think of my own kids and how dirty they are, but
Yeah.
So, okay, this
And
is,
it's probably going to vary too, based on if you're in, elementary school
Yep.
as opposed to going back to college. They may not have those same list, but definitely for the younger children, when we know that they have a runny nose a lot more, they're going to require them to have more of those personal items. And JSB, what you mentioned, backpacks, that was something that was neglected next year.
Yeah.
Kids are super hyped about getting their favorite character or their favorite brand on their
Yeah.
backpack this year.
and it's interesting because that may tie into a trend also that like anime is really big, and now it's big on when it comes to like backpacks and attire. So I think it'll be interesting to see what trends take place on, video programming that kids and teens watched, and then see if that actually replicates in sort of the physical space. Because I know from just looking in different retailers, all the cool anime shows have backpack products now. It's pretty cool.
And lunch boxes. So
Yes.
a lot of parents now are going to be more inclined to pack their own kids' lunch. So we're going to see an increase in lunch boxes like we never have before. Like I'm getting a nostalgia from Fonzie lunchbox, like my happy days.
We were talking also about maybe some of the seasonal moments that were disrupted. And so Home and Garden, had specific season, but during the pandemic, it seems that, everyone had done some renovation in their house or their garden. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the data there as well.
Yeah, so we're actually seeing that start to increase as well. That hasn't slowed down a bit. So Home and Garden, when you think about like home decor and bedding and linen, those things are going to also transpire over to kids returning to college. Because remember, last year they had to leave the dorms. Now they're going back. You also have in some cases where some states let go of the SAT and the ACT. So more students now are getting into college. So Home and Garden is really going to see a huge uptick, especially when it comes to home decor, bedding and linen, and even furniture. Everyone needs a desk and a chair.
Events. Do you also think you'll see a rise in, because I've been watching a lot more sports on TV, the Lakers. Do you think like people will start buying more merch from their favorite team, since they can wear that out to an event?
Yeah, fan apparel is actually up 24%. So you're going to start seeing not only, even if the team, New York, the Knicks are out of the playoffs.
That's all right. That's my
But
team. They're terrible.
Those New Yorkers were so happy to put on that orange and blue. I've never seen so much orange and blue. So yeah, they're still going to see an uptick in it, whether they win or lose.
Love it. Fascinating.
All right, Casceil, any early tips or trends we should be on the lookout for the upcoming holiday season?
Absolutely. So we did a first party survey where we saw 48% of gift givers prefer to shop online. So online shopping is not going away, as well again as buy online, pick up in store, BOPUS. Those things are here to stay. Something new and intriguing that's really going to take a forefront this holiday is buy now, pay later. Imagine the number of gifts you can get. If you can buy it now and pay for it later, you don't even have to do layaway anymore. You just get it right then and there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. All these insights are available at microsoftadvertising.com/insights.
This is good stuff.
So what are 3 things that we could tell our advertisers and listeners to really think about as, all those demands for those specific categories are coming up? Things that they should think about.
Things that they should think about. One, remarket to your consumers continually, especially when you think about back to school season and also preparing for the holiday. What better time to start remarketing to them now? Also increase your audience coverage. So when you think about it, with seasons, you have travel, which is catching a boom right now. Sporting events are catching a boom right now. Again, weddings and proms. Remarket and target all of those audiences because they're all going to be really looking for the same thing, whether it's a formal outfit or whether it's a gift. So continue to remarket and increase your audience coverage.
Love it.
Right.
Casceil, this is great. You got to stop by more often for,
I love to.
future
I'm right down the
episodes.
street. I can do it anytime.
All right, Casceil Fuqua, who is our resident expert with us at Microsoft Advertising on all things retail. Thanks for joining us here on the
Thanks so
download.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're excited to debut a brand new segment here for the download. Let's roll the bumper.
And now, the download presents Trends with Benefits. Woohoo! New developments in marketing we are infatuated with.
What's our first trend with a benefit?
Well, speaking of retail, we talked about buy now, pay later. And we see this more and more. And so one particular company that caught my eye is one called Afterpay. And so it's available wherever you want to shop or many stores. But what's interesting as well is that on their website, it's almost like they're trying to recreate an online shopping mall. Because when you go to their website, it's what's new, what are the new trends, and they also have Black-owned brands and several different categories like that to make it easy for you to buy. And again, instant gratification, you get it, but you can pay later in installment.
Yeah, I think this is also interesting because, as you said, it's a marketplace, so it's taking the best of both worlds. Actually, a couple of worlds. Marketplace, search within that marketplace, and then a payment plan. I love it.
Yep. There's a few companies who do that. Another one is called Klarna, and I think that there's a few others as well. So an interesting space to watch this fintech revolution.
Yes. Now, what's another trend with a benefit?
I think you have one.
Oh, yeah, I do. It's called post-vaccination boldness.
Wow.
And this is basically where everyone is underestimating the post-pandemic, specifically companies and how they advertise. So what will end up happening is you have companies that don't have enough stock. People are asking for something. They can't get it. It's on back order. You go to a restaurant. There's not enough staff to accommodate everyone who's there. And then at the same time, you have people who are, companies who are advertising. They're actually making out quite well. Others are waiting, thinking like, okay, where are things going to go? And then before they know it, they lose out on the fact that there is a lot of demand right now and maybe not as much supply. So what I guess we're saying here is be a little bit more bold and forecast a little bit more that we may come out not just on the good side at the end of all of this, but with such prowess, such, bold, a feeling out there that, plan accordingly in the sense that the economy might work quite well.
Do you mean plan for the unplanned?
Plan for the unplanned. That's
it.
correct.
And I think we have a third one.
We do.
Yes. I really enjoy this website called trendwatching.com, and they have identified a trend called omnibility. accessibility and how barriers become innovation, and how we continue to destigmatize disabilities. And we've seen a lot of influencers with disabilities who provide glimpses into their own everyday lives and redefining normality for millions of followers. And we see more and more companies holding each other accountable when it comes to putting disability on the agenda. We see governments investing into greater accessibility as well. Just thinking about your website, making sure that it's accessible. And again, don't think of disability as an individual problem. It's an identity that 1 in 5 people worldwide share, and that number will only increase as population age. So, omnibility. That was my last trend to watch out.
These are some sound insights, sound benefits, which, speaking of, we want to thank our special partners at Shure that helped this podcast sound really, really well.
Woo.
Now that work from home is going to be part of your future, give your telemeeting game an upgrade with Shure. They put studio quality sound in your home office. Shure, sound extraordinary. Like we do here on the podcast for The Download.
Watch the latest episode of The Download, the video show, number 8. And also, we just released a really important piece of content. It's a course, and it's called Inclusive Marketing with Purpose course. It's a free class. It's a free course. You can get a badge, and you can learn a ton of stuff. We talked about accessibility. That's one of the pillars. So make sure that you attend that course.
Yeah, and get the badge and display it proudly on your social platforms.
Absolutely. Speaking of social, make sure you follow us on all our social at Microsoft Advertising.
We're going to take a little break for the summer months or winter months, depending on where you are in the world. We'll be back in September with episode 3.
For the podcast, indeed.
Yes. And episode 9 for the video show.
Yep. We need to make sure that we can still count numbers because that becomes complicated.
Yes, it does.
Yep.
Episode 3 of the podcast, episode 9 for the video show. For The Download, I'm Jeffrey Colon of the brand studio at Microsoft Advertising.
Jennifer Solomon-Baum.
We will catch you soon.
You've been listening to the Download Podcast with Jennifer Solomon-Baum and Jeffrey Colon. All thoughts are their own. To watch the Download video show, visit microsoftadvertising.com/thedownload.